All right, folks, this is Gain, the Generative AI News Rundown. I'm Brett Kinsella, founder of Synthedia and VoiceBot.ai. Thanks for coming out today. We've done this pretty much every week, except for the last 3 weeks, but we'll talk about that in a moment, since February of last year, because there was just so much news and people were looking for a quick summary, a quick breakdown of the context, the story behind the story in generative AI. And our last one was right before the holiday, before the end of the year. So it's been a couple of weeks. We've had really busy schedules. We're even doing an early morning edition here on a Friday morning because that's what's going on. The year has started off in a flurry, but it started off in a flurry that's a little bit more organized than last year, because last year started off with a flurry as well. But we've got a lot of stories today. To break it all down, I have my colleague, Eric Schwartz. Hey, Eric.
Hey, excited to be back.
All right. Eric is the head writer at VoiceBot.ai. And I have to say, Happy New Year, Eric.
Yes, Happy New Year to you. The next year of generative AI after the last year of generative AI.
Exactly. Well, in fact, we've been actually writing about generative AI since arguably 2017, if you include synthetic voices. And if you just want to talk about BERT, I think we're going back to 2018. And so we've been on this road for a long time. You know, Synthedia obviously started during the summer of AI image generators, and then 2024 was the year of LLM powered assistance. I would say is probably the best aggregate, but it just like we can just call it a frenzy, a generative AI frenzy, if that's fair.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we've got a lot to get through today, and I know a lot of people like to come here just because, hey, we summarize the news really quickly for you. So that's what we're going to do today. I think we've got like 20 or 25 stories because there's been so much going on. We're going to get through a lot of them today. And if you are out there on LinkedIn, on YouTube or Twitter, actually, or X, I guess it's called now, we can actually live stream now to X. I don't even know what that looks like. Andrew, our producer, I don't even tell you I did this, I don't think. So you can actually just look at my Twitter and see what that looks like there. But let us know you're out there. Make comments, questions, tell us where you're dialing in from. All that stuff would be great. Okay, super. All right, so the first thing we want to talk about is a series of announcements around CES. We've got a lot of stuff end of year. There's other announcements outside of CES, but CES, it happens once a year. It is when all of the product makers come together and try to talk about the great things they're going to sell you, mostly TVs and cars and things like that. But there's always some interesting software, and AI has held the center stage really since about 2018, 2019, when Alexa from Amazon and Google Assistant really started to everyone just started doing that. Well, we're seeing a lot more generative AI now this year, not surprisingly. And the first story we have today is Rabbit. Now, you wrote about Rabbit. I wrote about Rabbit. But tell me, what's your take on Rabbit? What is it? Why should people care? Does it matter?
Yeah, so as people have become more comfortable with generative AI and LLMs, moving from software to hardware is obviously part of that evolution. And Rabbit is a startup that's trying to combine LLMs with custom hardware, custom technology. In this case, it's supposed to be a more intention-based kind of LLM, but with its own unique device that is supposed to, essentially like a little portable mini smartphone, but only for interacting with this generative AI assistant. And it feels in some way kind of limited or maybe specialized, but regardless, very, very popular. And the company just hit $30 million in funding in a funding round, and immediately sold out of everything that they were pre-selling in terms of the device itself. It's a lot of hype. And potentially a big deal, but potentially, a bust if people don't actually like what the device ends up being when it actually is shipped.
It strikes me as a Kickstarter in a lot of ways. Okay, so here's the thing. They created a separate device so you could have a generative AI backed voice assistant. That's it. Now, there's more to the story, but why didn't they just put it on a mobile device? Why didn't they put it on some other device? Well, the reason is that those mobile devices are they say are too restrictive. And I think at iOS, certainly that's true. I think different argument can be made for Android. But they wanted to do sort of this novel assistant, and they needed a vehicle to get it to the masses. And so this is the way they're doing it. Now, whether people are going to put one of these devices in their pocket alongside their smartphone seems highly questionable to me, because it doesn't replace your smartphone. They're very clear about that. What it does is it allows you to navigate apps with your voice and basically execute tasks. It is a task execution voice assistant. This is something we know a lot about. Mm-hmm. And it didn't want to be encumbered by all the restrictions that an iOS platform puts on you. So that's like the first thing. And it is driven by what's called a large action model, as opposed to a large language model. But it's really, there's a large language model, and then there's a large action model. Large language model figures out what you want, large action, and then it passes over to large action model where to go get it. Essentially it's like the orchestration engine that goes to the applications and fulfills your requirement.
Yeah. And of course, there's the most important unasked question: why is it called Rabbit if it's using a lamb?
I'm glad you saved that for this broadcast, because I've not heard that. I like that. Both are excellent in Stew. I think that's the commonality. Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think we're going to see, we've heard of like the humane AI pin, which is supposed to be sort of an unobtrusive, essentially recorder connected to an LLM. I mean, these kinds of devices are going to be a lot of experiments with how can this technology be expanded beyond purely software. But the debate will be, do you want something specialized like this, or do you want it just to be included in your existing technology, or in a wearable that has other uses like glasses?
Yes. Okay. So I'll just like couple swing thoughts here. First is it's a do engine. So there's this whole concept around do engines and no engines, or doing and knowing. And Adam Chaya, founder of Siri and Live Labs, he really came up with this concept. And they always talked about Siri as a do engine. It does things for you. It interacts with your applications, et cetera. Okay, great. That's what this is. It's a do engine. It's just using generative AI as opposed to sort of more programmatic interfaces that people were doing in the past. So whereas ChatGPT is the knowing engine. It answers lots of questions. It has knowledge. It recombines it for you in novel ways. This is basically supposed to be a better widget than Siri, Alexa, Google Assistant. I think that's really where we're coming down. And they'd say that like you can navigate applications better and all these things. Fine. The software is the more interesting aspect of this, like this idea that you're taking the generative AI technology in order to be better at executing tasks than the more programmatic or the more narrow stochastic type of solutions we've had in the past. Very cool. But I just come to this final conclusion. Like, we've got this little handheld device, which is duplicative to something else we have, which so much of our life is in. Why didn't they just make it a watch?
Yeah. And a lot of, I would say fan art almost of Rabbit made it a device connected to a watch, or a lot of comparisons to an Apple Watch without the straps. I mean, yeah,
it would be a lot of bling because it is kind of big, but they could have just made it a little smaller. I think if this thing survives, it will be, if as a device, it will be a watch. I suspect they're going to pivot into more the software angle and provide that as an API, so people have this do engine for interacting with consumer apps. I think that's great. If they just get 1 million people maybe using their device, that will give them so much more data to build out the capabilities of their large action model, their LAM. So I think it's really interesting. But in any event, we thought we'd start it off with a new year with a new voice assistant. Who thought that was coming? All right. So you had another story. Speaking of voice assistants, the old is new again. Amazon Alexa at CES. What's going on?
Yeah, it was a little surprising. Not that, I mean, Amazon has been pushing out a lot of generative AI, but it was interesting that for CES they decided to go almost felt like nostalgic route of introducing new Alexa skills, but ones built around generative AI. So it's a mix of existing companies that have existing Alexa skills and a new one. But for CES, they showed off Volley, who we've written about before, for voice AI games has a new 20 questions game that uses an LLM. Character AI, which we've written about for creating virtual beings that you can interact with and have a conversation with, can now be accessed through the voice assistant. And Splash, which is a essentially generative AI music creator, where you can describe the kind of music you want and then essentially record yourself singing or rapping lyrics that the AI comes up with, and have essentially make your own song in collaboration with an AI, I guess, music producer. It's a few. They're all fun skills with some potential either educational or knowledge based functions. But what they do is sort of show off how Amazon is really keen to make generative AI part of everything in its ecosystem, including Alexa. And it's not just that they're making a brand new product. They're saying, hey, Alexa was going in this direction for years, and now it's just more of an official. If you're a developer and you want to build an Alexa skill, generative AI can be part of that process.
It's funny that you said you started with nostalgia, because I was thinking the nostalgia was just going to go back to September, because what they introduced at CES was exactly what they demoed to me and a bunch of other people, analysts and journalists, in September, and we all wrote about.
Yeah, well, it's the difference between the showing off the developer tools to developers and the consumer electronics show where they show the products.
But they were they were not highlighting the developer tools to us. They were showing us what was coming. Here's my point.
True.
Is I would say that, okay, it was a preview. They showed us how you use an LLM with Alexa, and here are some third-party applications, and here are some native applications or native capabilities within Alexa with an LLM. Isn't Alexa so much better? That's great. Something they should do. And they said, oh, this is going to be available publicly in a couple of months. Also great. During this intervening time, they couldn't come up with one new thing to show people.
It's true. I wonder if maybe they just felt that they'd hit the best kind of examples, but I also wonder if it's that how much of it, there's always the question of how much of it is the technical decisions and how much is a business decision. If they came
up with the best kind of solutions, boy, that is a short list.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm not even going to say whether these are good or bad, because I've interacted with them and they're not that great, but it's okay. It's I haven't played 20 questions yet. That might be amazing. I don't know, but I'm just saying, oh my gosh, you couldn't come up with one additional thing. So that's why I was just a little surprised. It's I understand, they've had layoffs and restructuring since then, and they're really focused on the business side, but I think it's a miss on their part. It's people are writing about it because they're Amazon, not because they've done something more interesting than they did 3 months ago.
It's true. Yeah. And, maybe that, Amazon has done well voice assistant wise over the last several years. And maybe they feel like the core product is strong enough that it should be just about enhancing it and improving it rather than overhauling it the way some of their rivals might be doing. But yeah, I guess it's also about how Amazon, at least for now, is still interested in fostering and supporting the community of developers, both independent and businesses or smaller businesses. So maybe that's just part of their saying,
I think
we're not leaving you behind.
It's a commercial in case you missed what we talked about 3 months ago. But okay, cool. I like it. You're giving the positive interpretation, which is very unlike you. So I like it.
It's also
turned over a new leaf.
Yeah, it's also, remember, Jeff Bezos may be gone, but Alexa was his baby. It was never going to get any less than 100% support when he was CEO, and I doubt that that's changed that much even when he's officially gone.
Fair enough. Braden Ream, hey, what's going on? He says, love the early morning stream from the team, setting in with some coffee, and it's very early for him. I'm not sure where he is, but usually he would be 3 hours earlier, so early morning, so maybe 2 cups of coffee. Okay, so if you were out there, this is Gain, the Generative AI News Rundown. If you just joined us, if you're on LinkedIn, if you're on X, if you're on YouTube, let us know you're out there, just like Braden did. Let us know where you're watching from. That would always be great. Or where you work, or what your interest is. All those stuff are good. Make comments, add questions. We'll incorporate you into the show. Okay, let's see. Our next story. Oh, this was, I think, a CES story that I thought was pretty interesting. Go for it. BMW.
Yeah. Actually, the automotive side of things at CES is always a big thing, and I was surprised to see that even with generative AI, it's still the case. And BMW always very keen to show off whatever its latest technology for its vehicles are, and that's still the case now with their plans to incorporate again Amazon's generative AI and into their voice assistant. They've announced a collaboration last year and maybe in the year before, and they were using the custom assistant system that Amazon came up with to make it more BMW branded. But now I guess the next level will be involving LLMs as well, so even more uh, advanced version of the AI assistant. And it's kind of funny because it was a demo last year and it's still a demo now. It hasn't actually officially come out, but supposedly in the next year we'll start seeing vehicles with this really with a ChatGPT level conversational tool, but powered with Amazon's LLM library.
Yeah, I think it's good stuff. If you think about like being in the car and like the different type of use cases and sort of on the go, the open-ended conversation, the versatility of large language models, I think is really good. And BMW and Mercedes continue to lead the way in automotive for using AI interaction in the cockpit. And maybe it's because they're premium brands and because they want to differentiation so much harder, or their customers want it, whatever it is. But they really come up with novel concepts, and they continually incorporate new technology without replacing the old. They don't feel like they just have to go one silo deep on one thing. They actually create their own platform, and they focus on the user experience, and then they plug in the components either developed by them or third party. And so, shout out to BMW and Mercedes for both being real innovators, and I think showing a lot of the tech companies how to be more customer focused than product focused sometimes, because some people just like throw stuff out there and say, you should love my thing. I'm not talking about Rabbit, or I could be.
Yeah.
Well, and they're not really thinking about or they're not giving enough credence to what consumers really need.
And I will say one thing that jumped out was they made a point of highlighting how this voice assistant will be able to include everything in your car manual, and you'll be able to have like a human level discussion, but which is something that they made it sound like it's brand new, but is something that SoundHound put together as a feature for its own.
Cerence has had this platform. I think Cerence might have been the first to have this, and they had it through their traditional voice assistant internally, but SoundHound also implemented this. Yeah. And that's a great feature, because it's impossible. Like if you have to look something up in your car, it's hard. You wind up going to YouTube to watch videos as opposed to looking at your manual. But if you can talk in natural language and get you to the answer faster, that's like pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I hope what they're going to do is integrate it with YouTube videos from third parties who really know what users go through, because then you don't have to wait till minute 6.5 to find the information you really need. It'll just get it for you instantly.
Or just being able to say, hey, what does that light on my dashboard mean? Then having an answer.
Oh, yeah, in context. Exactly. I'm excited. Okay. So I was trying to remember is this really a CES announcement, or was this just before? But in any event, Getty has announced generative AI by iStock. They had generative AI by Getty, I think was called just a couple months ago. But Getty owns a lot of these things: Unsplash, iStock. Like a lot of people don't know that Getty is like the Borg when it comes to what do we call these things? Image marketplaces.
Stock media.
Stock media, that type of thing. And so some of you may remember a year ago, Getty pulled all generative AI from their library and said that this is bad, and they've engaged in lawsuits, all while they were building their own generative AI solution to re-offer to the market, because, hey, there's if you can't beat them, join them, or there's money to be made or something. I will say I have a fairly negative view of the way they've approached the market here. So just full disclosure, because the way they came out so self-righteousness and just thinking about the way they don't provide a lot of value to the artists who create around their platform. But that aside, they have a new solution. through iStock. Through Getty, you have to, it's like a corporate license. You have to talk to a salesperson. They set this up. But now through iStock, you can just like sign up, you buy images, buy the download, and just keep in mind, unlike Ballie, unlike Midjourney, these are not in the public domain. These are not fully owned by you with full rights by you. You pay for the use of the engine that creates an image for you, and you have limited rights that that Getty can enforce on you. So you can use it, but just not everywhere or all the time or at the scale that they think they can make more money off of.
It's the trade-off of some of the indemnity coverage that they offer as well through.
That is okay. So like, really, come on. Doesn't
Well, that's their pitch,
OpenAI offer
not that
indemnity?
yeah.
Doesn't Stability AI even offer indemnity now? I mean, it's like, doesn't Microsoft through Bing Chat and Bing Create offer indemnity?
Yeah, well, it's also about how there's a legacy, prestige, respect thing related to both Getty and one or two of its
but not
fellow stock media platforms. But really, it's a company trying to get ahead of the changes in technology without having to alter its.
It is a company trying to protect their moat. Yep. This is what I say. I just but I will say, there's a couple things that I think are interesting, worth mentioning on the positive front. So first of all, they say that they have only trained the models using NVIDIA Picasso, only trained the models on images where they have rights or the rights are in the public domain. Okay. It might even not be the second part, but like certainly from their catalog, things where they have rights associated with it. So they're saying there's no potential use of artists' images. They're not already within the Getty ecosystem.
Yeah. And it, I mean, they say those artists whose images are used for training will be compensated in some way. So there's that as well.
Now they've said that for a long time now. I think it's going back 6 months. They've been talking about this. Might have even been longer. We've yet to see anything about what that means. And when I posted on LinkedIn about this, someone came back and said, "Yeah, exactly. When these things happen, they like to take the high road that they're helping artists, but when it comes down to it, the royalties are, I think they, in quote, sparingly small." And that's what I'm expecting, but we'll see. And there's some other people, I saw some artists like sort of chime in and say, "Hey, listen, Getty's got some of my stuff and they've had it for a long time. And like, I don't ever remember giving them rights to it." Like, so there's these other things about chain of custody and things like that. I'm sure Getty has more lawyers than these independent creators. So it probably means Getty de facto owns the rights.
Yeah. Think about who it's named for.
Yeah, well, perfect. Okay. So in any event, all the big stock image sites are now building things so you can create AI generated images because, hey, existential risk. I think if we use Midjourney and Ballie and those types of things, 100 to 1 to any stock image site at this point. So yeah, we're one of the reasons that they feel like they have to dig their nails in and hold on to that business model. Okay. Intuition Robotics also at CES. Robots.
Yep. Yeah. This one, speaking of nostalgia, one of the early things I started when I started at VoiceBot.ai, I remember writing a lot about was technology for older people, elder technology. And ElliQ is a robotics company. It started off as a crowdfunded creation for a robotic companion for older people, especially those who are living alone. And the advent of LLMs has just made these kinds of companions more versatile and better able to customize their interactions with users. So this is the new the ElliQ 3 has an LLM built into it to help build up rapport essentially with users. Chatting with them and connecting them with their friends and family, making recommendations, and really becoming a sort of virtual friend for people who are in their 80s or 90s and so on. And it's a great tool. It's become quite popular. There are a lot of government programs that distribute it for free. The New York State, their Office for Aging, has distributed thousands of these robots to older people, and
I didn't know that. That's fairly interesting. Yeah.
it has a lot of the sort of um, the appeal of this kind of virtual companion with a lot less. It's not complicated. It's not opening your pill bottles for you. It's just chatting with you and answering questions and making sort of recommendations for exercises and meals and so on, which is what people who maybe aren't too comfortable with complex technology, it's all they want.
Yeah. Digital companions, really good use case. And we saw that already. We've seen that previously with Alexa and the earlier versions of LEQ, with the pure NLP based assistants, the open-ended capabilities of generative AI, great for these digital companions. There's no question about it. It's one of the reasons why character AI is so popular.
Mhm.
Okay, next story. McAfee. New Project Mockingbird aims to detect deepfake voices. McAfee, we know that name
Yes. Well, yeah. I mean,
for lots of reasons, but like we'll talk
yeah.
about the
Well,
way you.
as a product, I mean, I see the name and all I think of is a reminder to update or pay for cybersecurity. But in this case, the company still exists. It's been a mainstay of that world for decades now, and now they're including deep fake audio detection as part of their looking for scams or for fraud of some kind. And Project Mockingbird, obviously named for the bird that can mimic the sound of other birds or other animals. They say it's a 90% accuracy of being able to tell when an audio voice is a synthetic one made with generative AI, or when there's a what they call a cheap fake, which is synthetic audio over a real video. And the idea is to help protect people from scams, whether it's a celebrity endorsing some sort of company that wants you to give them money, or a scam involving there's the ones of the stories of people being told that their relatives are held hostage and they have to pay ransom money when it's all fake. There's a lot of work being done on both making synthetic voices better and being able to tell when they are being deployed. So I think McAfee's right to want to make that part of their own portfolio.
Yeah, so we have a few different solutions out there. Like we just had pin drop on, and they have it for enterprises, like large enterprise in particular. McAfee bring this into the consumer realm.
Yeah, I think so. And it's also because there's, as you say, there's different approaches, and there's the companies that create synthetic audio can put on these essentially watermarks so that they can always identify when their own technology is being used. But if it's a rogue developer or some company that doesn't have those watermarks, then you need something like this to be able to spot fake audio.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. Microsoft installs Copilot Key on PC keyboards for generative AI assistant access.
Yeah, it's kind of almost made me laugh because, talking about things I've written about a lot over the years, the years long decline and death of Cortana as a virtual assistant included the sort of these relics of a Cortana button on some old keyboards, and now Microsoft's going all in on its Copilot, which without ever mentioning Cortana, is certainly doing a lot of things that Cortana was supposed to be doing, and now that includes making a button for Copilot part of the keyboard. Microsoft is essentially saying this is our new Windows key. That this is how you'll know it's a Microsoft device or you're using a Microsoft operating system. And the Windows key is now just like a part and parcel of any PC, but I don't know if the Copilot key is going to have quite the same legacy.
Fair enough. It's like, well, they're trying to bring it in. It's kind of like on Mac, you can get the voice assistant up. I think it kind of makes sense, but
well, and then speaking of, I mean, it's not elder technology per se, but if you want people who are who have certain routines when they use their computers, so they want them to try something new, you may actually need an actual button for them to push to try it.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, Now I'm out of focus. There we go. That's what happens when you sneeze. Okay. Last CES story of the day. Ballie comes back to life. But I don't know. Overeating, the Incredible Hulk. I don't know what happened to it. Okay, so maybe this picture doesn't do justice to it. I'll try to find another way. You tell people about it. But I will tell people Ballie used to be something, I don't know, maybe a little larger than a baseball, maybe softball size. When they first demoed it at CES, and it was not just a video. They actually had a demonstration. There was like a floor laid out. This ball moved around, and it was a ball, and it basically just it was designed to patrol the house, kind of like the Astro Robot. And it was kind of ridiculous, but also very elegant, right? And I'm sure people were worried about like stepping on it and falling and all these other types of issues that you have, particularly when their lawyers get involved. But it was this really cool, elegant solution that may not have had a lot of like important applications, but it was just super cool and even cooler than like Astro Robot. And they decided to make something that was a monstrosity that I'm trying to think of it. You know, if anybody's ever had like these giant fans they put in your house, if you've ever had like water damage and like these giant fans is like are blowers and things, it kind of reminds me of that, or a small generator that you might put out in your garage. It is giant and strikes me as useless.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because you know, obviously other things happened soon after it, but if you look at when Samson talked about Ballie before, it was CES 2020, and you know, other things took over the news later on. But the way that they pitched it back then versus how it looks now, it is very much. It sort of feels like they had at least ahead of the curve, you know, maybe good, maybe off idea of what this kind of robot could do, and now it feels much more like just an imitation of as you said, of Astro, of robots that are now actually already exist and can be bought elsewhere.
Yeah, fair enough. It just like, it's so disappointing. I feel like I've been fairly negative in this section, and usually I'm more positive about like taking out the things that are good, but I just feel like these are like easy misses. Like people shouldn't do that. But okay, that'll wrap up our CES section, and we'll get into some things where maybe we'll have more positive sentiment, or maybe I will have more positive sentiment. Eric's been pretty level-headed right along. I've just been expressing my it started 2024. People do better. Angst. This is Gain, the Generative AI News Rundown. We do this just about every week. It was every week. I think it was 40 weeks in a row, and then we've hit holidays and stuff. But we go through all of the top news in generative AI, and we try to put a little context around it. And hopefully that provides a nice service to you. If you're out there, like, let us know you are, and on LinkedIn, YouTube, or X, and chime in. Okay. Surprisingly, we've gone a long time without really talking about OpenAI. And they had a big announcement this week.
Yeah. Again, like we were saying with what Amazon was doing, I mean, this is something that they talked about and technically unveiled last year at the big dev day. It's the GPT store. When they announced at the time these data, you can make your own custom version of ChatGPT with like specialized functions, or you know, your own spin on how to use the LLM. And now there's a store where you can try out others, the creations of other people who have been playing with custom GPTs, and again with a potential monetization component coming in from them. But yeah, it's you know, it's the next step. It's everyone. There's a level of comfort with how ChatGPT works, how this technology works, and now the question is, how do you know, as they say, democratize it and make it something that any sort of independent developer, or just someone who has an idea for how to use ChatGPT can share with others.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting. I don't know how popular it'll be. I mean, we saw the Alexa store and the Google Action store sort of come and go. It's not that they're gone, but like enthusiasm around them was high and then was not. And I think it's good. So first of all, customized experiences, GPTs. We had a whole like online demo of that with, you know, 10 different developers and those types of things. But oh, Chad is like, he knows right where I'm going. I thought it was a bit underwhelming. Chad Oda is here. You know, how do we protect our prompts from getting stolen? Haven't found a good solution yet. Okay, so Yeah, the GPT store is super underwhelming. So first of all, it's a distribution mechanism. And by the way, anytime you put up a store online, discovery is a problem. Like we've seen this over and over again. It's like the most persistent recurring theme. But this idea that people can create something for themselves with ChatGPT that's like customized to like either them personally or a specific task they might have, I think super good idea. The idea that they could share it with others, also very good idea. The opportunity that they could potentially monetize that if it's like super useful, also a good idea. Although it's sort of question like these things are pretty replicable, and I think that's what one of the things Chad was talking about. Talk about protecting your prompts. You use a prompt to create the GPT, and then OpenAI's ChatGPT just sort of figures out what the best customization of that experience is. Anybody else can sort of get in there and sort of reverse engineer it. But okay. So I think it's good, but I think ultimately it is underwhelming. If you look at it, it's very hard to find GPTs. There are tens of thousands of GPTs. I've analyzed a lot of them. But if you just scroll through the store in terms of the browse mode, you can find a few dozen. And then everything else you actually have to know the name of. So that doesn't mean that the responsibility isn't on the developers to sort of promote it and get people to know what it is. But like, this is not a panacea. Like every other platform that has like App Store model before them, they are primarily promoting things that they've developed or things that big companies or big brands have done to make it easy for them. Because like, why not? Like show off the things people know. It's like we're popular, that type of thing. And I was talking to Roger Kibbe, who's people know from Samsung and Bixby. And it's hard. It's hard when you do a store. Like, what do you promote? What don't you? How do you put it forward? But I think a lot of us who have been down this road, either with chatbots or with mobile apps or with Alexa skills, find this to be not a great implementation, and actually hasn't really learned. There's a few things they could do, which the other stores did before them that would help this. But it's early, so they launched early, and we'll see how it develops.
Yeah, I think exactly. It's a harbinger. I think. I mean, there are other LLM based app store experiments going on with Poe and so on. But I think a lot of attention, a lot of decisions will be made based on how well the GPT store performs.
Since you brought up Poe, we have more OpenAI stories, but let's talk about Poe for just a second. Because it is good context. So Quora created Poe. I think a lot of people know who it is, but they just raised $75 million. There's sort of an interesting story here where the company a couple years ago was valued at $2 billion. And in fact, 10 years ago was valued at $900 million. And now they're valued at $500 million. So they took $75 million from Andreessen Horowitz. It's not like a big funding round. I think it's just a cash injection from Andreessen Horowitz, who likes the idea of what Poe can do. So, they say basically Quora itself, the sort of expert answer site, is cash flow positive, and that's just going to run the way it is. All the new money is going to go towards Poe.
Yeah, so, I mean, Quora is helpful for Poe, and that's why it still exists.
Yeah, and I think Poe is very interesting because it's like Switzerland. It's just it's an open platform. You can put all sorts of different bots on there, so you can have discovery, right? Like we talked about, although their discovery is no great shakes either. But they also have no code builder, so you can take your custom built bot, put it on there. They have a no code builder. You can create several different things. And it is a place where you can see the variety of generative AI technologies and assistants all in one place. So I think that is kind of novel and probably valuable. It's like I characterize it as a playground of playgrounds. I'm not sure there's like a big market for that, but I like it, in that way that like you and I can dip in and just say, hey, what's going on over here?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, Poe has a feeling of being a little more technical, even though it's not necessarily true, but it has a feeling of, if you're someone who isn't just reading a newspaper headline, but is actually like seeking out more information about LLMs and generative AI, you're gonna probably want to play around with Poe because it gives you more opportunity that way. And the same goes for the serving as a hub for these specialized custom chatbots. But I think all Quora really needs is one or two killer apps, as it were, from Poe developers to really justify the money from Andreessen Horowitz and its investment in general in the concept.
Yeah, I think that's right. And the other thing I will say is that the thing about the ChatGPT and the GPTs ecosystem is you are fully dependent on what OpenAI develops, so the capabilities that they put in the market, and what they allow you to do. So we've got this idea of what it's capable of, and then what the guardrails are. So if you go over to Poe, that they could also do that type of things, but they could put their own guardrails on it. But like, there's an opportunity for someone to have like not the guardrails, so it's like it's whatever they decide is fine, but it's not whatever the restrictions are that OpenAI puts on it. They also then, if there's a new solution that comes up, there's two benefits here. One is this: it's outside of the OpenAI ecosystem. You can't get it through GPT Store, right? But you can get it here. And the second thing is, if you are the developer of that, you actually have a distribution platform potentially. You don't have to create your own marketplace like OpenAI just did. So therefore, you don't necessarily need as much awareness of what you do or as much money.
Yeah, and it's also because the LLMs, there's still so much question about, like, there's a real sense of there's a lot of value here, but not necessarily an understanding of all the ways that the value can be extracted, and that's where Poe comes in. I mean, and we talked about how Quora is taking all this money from Andreessen Horowitz for this project, but of course Quora's CEO is also connected at OpenAI, so there's a lot of potential crossover.
There's
the
whole conflict of interest thing, but like we'll skip that for today. The fact that he's on the board and he's creating competing product. Let's get back to ChatGPT. So they came out with a team edition, which I thought was pretty interesting. And they really have a nice setup here, I have to say. They've got free, plus. So plus is better than free. It's for individuals. They've got team, which is kind of like plus, but you can do collaboration, you can share GPTs, and you have some basic administration functions around members, around billing, and these types of things, like, and a little bit more security. And then you have enterprise, which has a lot more security and a lot more admin functions. And then you can get the 128K model as opposed to the 32K context model and those types of things. It's like really nice. It's like really easy to you look at your tiering. You go from 0 to 20 to 25 to 30, which is like the team. And then you have $50 for the enterprise. I have to say, I at least like the way they've done their product portfolio, which I can't say for a lot of people in this space.
Yeah, much like the GPTs, they can customize your how much you want to spend, how big is your team, how much power do you need, and they will have some sort of model for it. And that's a kind of flexibility that a lot of small businesses appreciate, I think.
Yeah, and something that's come up along these lines is, okay, so why wouldn't a small business just use Copilot for Microsoft, or why wouldn't they just use Bard, or some customized version of Perplexity or something like that? And I think like the point here is that this is across solutions. And so you might have Copilot if you're a Microsoft shop, but like you have applications and functions in your organization that are outside of that. So are you going to invest in Copilot for that or something else? And so I think that's the potential win here, is that OpenAI has something that's not dependent on a underlying workforce productivity solution, whether it's Adobe or Google Workspace. It's just, here's a bunch of, you can create any solutions you want for productivity in the enterprise using generative AI. And since a lot of people are using this anyway, I think it's interesting. The one thing I will say is it's devoid of workflow, and they're hoping that GPTs will be enough workflow. But if you're actually building like a blog writer or information analyzer, something the wrapper that someone like Jasper puts around it, even though the problems they've had, is kind of useful, because then like your team has this way to collaborate and to iterate over time. Maybe these things will come from a domain standpoint, but I still think largely we're going to have that provided by third-party application providers.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think watch this space. There's going to be a lot more of this.
Okay, so here's another story about ChatGPT or OpenAI that was a couple of weeks ago, but we haven't had a session since then. New York Times suing OpenAI for using some of its articles in training and then amazingly, they were able to ask a question in ChatGPT, and they got verbatim responses from New York Times articles. What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, this New York Times is going to be the test case for this, because they have the resources to back this lawsuit as long as they want, and they have the institutional power to make sure people pay attention. And this is going to be where the question of how LLMs get trained and who owns the data used to train them gets answered one way or another. Eventually, there will be either an accommodation or one big winner, but either way, this is going to define how future LLMs are trained and where their data comes from.
So I have a slightly different take on this. I don't think this is ever going to set a precedent, because New York Times has a lot to lose and almost nothing to gain. It's possible they could, because if they won the suit, everyone would just eliminate all their stuff from everything, and there's no way they'd ever get license revenue. And if they lose it, then basically all of their data is for use by anybody. And this all comes down to fair use. It's very tenuous. And like I was saying, sort of saying it tongue in cheek, the New York Times, first of all, the New York Times broke the story that the New York Times was suing OpenAI, which I thought was amazing. It's great journalism. One of the key things about it, though, is they have all these exhibits where they got these verbatim responses. You should see the prompts that they used. They're like, for this article, and they would like have a link, and like they would have excerpts from it, answer this question. And then it would come back and would basically just say, it's like amazing. It's like, if I ask an LLM to tell me something based on this data set, which is only this one thing, and it gives me back this one thing that's the only thing in the data set I'm asking it to look at, boy, that's terrible. I should be surprised at that. They were creating scenarios that just don't exist in the world.
It's true. I agree with that. Although I will say the one part where that may actually matter is the question about paywalled stories. If it's pulling information that a person couldn't get just with a Google search, then it becomes more of a question.
If it's a paywalled story, then how is it used in training data?
Exactly.
Because it shouldn't be open to scraping. And I think OpenAI's point here was like, hey, you know what? This stuff is fair use for training, first of all, but they also have this thing where they can say, hey, I don't want my stuff in there. And so they basically said it's the right thing to do. I just think that the New York Times is not actually the white knight that they're trying to portray themselves as. In this case, they're just trying to get more than the $1 million that OpenAI is offering companies. It's just a tactic to get a lot more money out of the companies that appear to have a lot of money.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep moving. Google Bard. So we have a couple things on Google Bard. We have a couple things on Google. We'll hit these really quickly. I don't even know if we can get to all the funding. Maybe we'll do all the funding stuff next week. So Google Bard is going to have a paid version. It's going to be on Gemini Ultra. It's going to be like basically ChatGPT Plus. I thought that was pretty interesting. Not surprising, but interesting that it's coming out right now. They're going to do some stratification. I will say that just like I use Bard, like we use all the things. I don't use it as much as some of the others, but when I asked it to compare itself to ChatGPT, it had an error in the third line. Something that like it should know that it's not using the Lambda model, which it hasn't used for almost a year now. But yeah, I mean, I think we're just setting ourselves up for this battle royale that we have the business side, and then we've got the consumer side. And this is Bard's first foray on the consumer side to sort of go beyond sort of the free offering into something that they can generate cash on.
Yeah, it's Google's just catching up in a lot of ways with what OpenAI and Microsoft have done. And I think, whatever you've seen OpenAI, Microsoft, or Meta or Google do, the others are going to do the same if they haven't already, in terms of these sort of basic ideas of a paid version of a product.
Yeah, fair enough. So I think it's worth keeping an eye on. Obviously, I really believe that Bard is going to be everything. We have this other story that's bubbled up around the Google Developer Experts Program, which was third-party experts Google Developer Experts Program for Google Assistant. third-party experts who help the community build on Google Assistant, that was shut down. And Sissy Howe, who runs this group in Google, controls Bard and Google Assistant. All of the funding, as we said 3 months ago and last week, is going into Bard. Like, this is part of the decline of Google Assistant, which is fine. It's just like everyone should just be aware of that. Like, this is where we are headed. The other place that Google's headed is bots for retailers.
Yeah, this is interesting because Google, of course, is a huge part of so many businesses, just either under the hood or just in how they operate. And these kinds of tools can be a real help for, Google's experimented with so many ways of making, especially retail companies, reliant on them for helping guide customers and reviews and information. And there's been good and not so good ideas from there, but generative AI, I think, will be a major element of the next several years of Google pitching itself as the key partner for any business in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Before we get to winners and losers of the week or end of the year, beginning of the year, whatever we're going to call this, we are going to do just quick hits, no more than 20, 25 seconds on each of these. Eric, funding fountain. First one up, Perplexity AI, $73.6 million.
Yep. They're Perplexity is one of those, you don't hear about them as much as ChatGPT, of course, but as a conversational answer engine, as they put it, they do some really good work with offering citations. And I think that this kind of money is going to help them compete in the not Microsoft and not Google realm of LLMs.
It's going to take more than $73 million to take on Google, but it is the best search experience today. Clinical generative AI assistant Nabla raises $24 million.
Yeah, I mean, I've been writing for years about these clinical voice assistants, and LLMs just make them better, more flexible, and more useful for all kinds of healthcare professionals.
Also, key point, that space is getting crowded. There used to be 1, 2, 3, and then it's just sort of dribbled out. Now that's I think we've seen in the last 6 months, we've seen 4 or 5 of these. So, and I'm sure there's many more. So that's going to be super interesting. Leonardo, a solution I know you've used a few times. They raised $30 million.
Sort of the synthetic image world is getting a lot of money. Leonardo is part of that. They have a platform where you can create and control essentially a library of synthetic images and use them as templates for use one image with a style you like as a template for a whole range of assets. Again, on the sort of retail / small business front, these are the kinds of tools that are going to be really useful for companies that want to stay on brand, but also use synthetic media engines. You
can go full bore into Adobe world and be locked in there. Leonardo's like a nice solution on the side. And we've got Replicate raised $40 million.
Yeah. Again, talking about sort of world of synthetic images, synthetic media. This is an open source model, open source model for synthetic media. It combines a lot of tools in one place and makes it easier for the average, not necessarily code savvy user to create ideas and experiment with them. And it's fun. It's nice having all these tools in one place, I will say, regardless of which one it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. And I'm sure we'll talk about several of those companies in more detail as new products come out, new customer case studies are on the web. All right. So winners and losers, do we want to do of the week? I guess since the first of the year, what do we want to do? You want to do
you want to start positive the first of the year and
let's do it. Yeah. Who's the winner?
For me, I'm going to say Cerence, the automotive AI company. We didn't dwell too much on them, but they had a few big things happen at CES. They working with NVIDIA to create an LLM. They're working with Volkswagen to link ChatGPT into their voice assistant. As far as they're still part of the BMW support, they're really for all the they've been having some issues, as every company has, tech companies had in the last year or so. They seem to be they seem to have found a path for using generative AI to really succeed, or at least not fall behind.
I'm going to say, interestingly, Poe or Quora, because like I think they needed the cash infusion. I think like it was just hard for me to see them getting anywhere. They do have an interesting idea. I think they've got all these other issues associated with sort of the organization and the conflicts of interest and all these other things. But like I think it's something that's great that it exists, and it's nice to see that there will be some funding behind it for that to grow, because it might actually be a platform for third-party developers that levels the playing field a little bit against some of the giants who are controlling their own marketplaces. There is a comment that just came in from LinkedIn too. They're asking about HeyGen and whether we'd covered them in the past. And absolutely, we've covered them in the past. I think they're super interesting. I don't think there's any news right now, but I think they're interesting. Okay, who are your losers who is your loser this week?
I think I'm gonna have to say the company that we haven't mentioned at all, that would normally be something we talk about, certainly at CES. Apple. I mean, we know they're doing something, but all we get are rumors and hints and back room deals that have no specific products. It feels weird that they're not more of the story. They don't have to be, because they're Apple. They have iPhones, but it's odd that they're not more a part of the story.
Well, I would just like to say that Apple is my reserve, that I should tell people that my loser of the week in generative AI every week is Apple, and anything I mention is just in addition to Apple. So I agree with you 100%. And the Vision Pro, which is the product that very few people want, and I'm not really convinced it's going to be that interesting, is coming out. I mean, like it's fine. I mean, I think it's like, well, in any event, we could talk about the Vision Pro again. I just think that like they could be doing so much better. It's such a cool device. It just like totally misses the moment, is what I guess is the way I'm thinking about it. Okay, cool. And now my loser of the week, or loser of the start of the year, I'm just going to say Amazon. I really felt like they should have put more on the table between October of this year, September of this year, and January. I thought they could have put more into Alexa, and maybe we'll see it next month. Maybe we'll see it the month after. But for them just to regurgitate what they showed everybody 4 months ago, it shows that maybe the momentum that they seem to be building on the consumer side, forget about the Bedrock side, because I think that's going very well. And the momentum around the recasting of Alexa maybe has stalled a bit. All right, folks. I think that might be it. Any parting shots, Eric?
Just that as crazy as every week seemed last year, I feel like this year is going to be even crazier when it comes to trying to cram everything that happens in a week into an hour-long show. That's
true. Maybe more news, but a lot of it less impactful. I think that's about right. All right, folks, welcome to 2024. Thanks for joining us in the Generative AI News Rundown. Join us again next week. We should be back on schedule, 11 a.m. on Thursday. Thanks a lot. I'm Brett Kinsella from Synthetia and VoiceBot. That's Eric Schwartz from VoiceBot.ai. Bye-bye.